Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the iHeart channel, iHeart Radio, with your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show, new topic. Actually, not really a new topic. This time it's a topic that I've been tackling a lot of, and it is an important topic because I think it affects all of us. And mental health is important to all of us, right? Would you agree? Wouldn't you agree? I don't think so. I think everybody would agree to the fact that we need the mental health, and the physical health is attached to that as well. So we're going to talk about the connection there. And again, we never can run out of discussion on this topic. So I have with me a life coach, a motivational speaker who actually handles this, helps people and helps them through their, mental crises, whatever you want to call it, but also is someone who actually not only is doing the work, but has experienced some of his own, journey in terms of mental health and all the work that he had to do and some addiction and stuff. And we're going to talk about it. I like Justin, actually, Brien, to actually talk to us about it. So Justin, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your story, because I think that's a very good preface and prelude to the actual work that you do today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a great thing to connect. I know we tried to connect for about a year now, and you know what? We're here. We're going to make this happen. And you know what? It's a good topic to talk about mental health, because there is a stigma that still follows it. I do believe that it's getting better, that people are getting more comfortable with talking about it. That being said, one out of, I think it's 9 people out of the World Health Organization says struggles with a mental illness. 1 out of 5 will have a mental health episode in their lifetime. But what I learned in mental health first aid was 5 out of 5 people have mental health. That means everybody on this planet has mental health. They have different, experiences, different traumas, and they all cope with their mental health differently. Unfortunately for me, I struggled with mental health from a very young age. And, looking back, I didn't know what depression was back then. I didn't know what anxiety was, So I dealt with my struggles, my mental health in an unhealthy manner, turning to alcohol and drugs to cope. So me growing up, I had very low self-esteem, self-worth, and self-confidence. And I took that with me through life. I really had no reason to have low self-esteem, low self-worth, self-confidence. I was athletic. I had good grades. People liked me. But, I was always comparing myself to other people. I wasn't comfortable as me. I put everybody on a pedestal ahead of me. And I honestly wanted to be everybody else but me. I didn't drink much in high school. But when I got out and I started playing junior hockey, I found what alcohol was giving me. It gave me self-esteem, self-worth, and self-confidence. But I didn't realize everything it was giving me was fake, obviously, as all those feelings of worth were fake, right? It'd bring me out of my shell a bit, make me more conversationalist, but everything it started to take from me was very real. By the time I was 21 years old, I was bartending downtown in Vancouver, and, I was pretty much a full-blown alcoholic at that time. And then 24 hit, and I tried drugs for the first time. At 24 years old, I did cocaine for the very first time, and I didn't remember the night, so I phoned up my buddy. I'm like, "Hey, man, what happened last night?" And he's like, "This is what happened."
That's a deja vu hangover show.
Yeah, and he's like, "This is what happened." And I was like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that, because I was against drugs. I wasn't against other people using them, because that's their choices, and I am no position to judge other people for their choices. But I did it. I'm like, okay. But then all of a sudden, he said something to me. And you shouldn't say to a person with my mindset. And he's like, "Man, you were funny last night." Well, right then and there, it clicked for me. I have alcohol for confidence. I have drugs to be funny. I got Michael's special juice from Space Jam. One shot of this, and then I'm Super Justin. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to have conversations. Let's get on the dance floor. I got to the point where actually an algorithm of how many drinks I would have before I left my house to, go to a friend's house, go play sports even. At one point I would have like one of those mini Mickeys when I was walking over to a friend's house. Just I would slam it, just to hope it, because I had that mind connection that, okay, if I drink this, I will be better at conversation. If I drink this, my anxiety will go down. Did it help? Yeah. But it was also a part of my mind game, my mindset that, when I get to the nightclub, I have a couple more shots. Okay, maybe I'm going to go talk to that girl. I'll have a couple more shots. Maybe I'll go on the dance floor and I'll be a better dancer, right? Because you don't pay attention to things. You start to open up, your inhibitions start to fall down, and you start to let go of, those insecurities. But, I started relying on those, where I was drinking every day. I started using drugs consistently. I was losing weight. I was getting pretty skinny. I was sleeping during the day, and I was a bartender. So I'd work from 4, 5, 6 till 2 or 3 in the morning. And then if I worked till 2, I'd close up that bar as quick as I could, and I'd get out for power half hour, drink as much as I could. And then, I'd walk home after, and I'd phone up, dial a bottle, and I'd have more alcohol waiting for me when I got home. And, soon I learned that you could get drugs too. It wasn't legal or anything like that, obviously, but I could get both delivered to my house, and I would do that by myself. I got to the point where I was comfortable with just drinking and doing drugs alone. That was my comfort zone. Just being alone, watching TV, staying up till 6, 7 in the morning, seeing the sun come up, and then I went to bed. One night, a bartender came up to me. He said, "Justin, can I ask you something?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "Do you think you drink too much?" And I was like, "No, I'm young and I like to have fun, When I should have taken him seriously, because he told me his story. He actually was an alcoholic, but he quit drinking. He was still able to bartend. But I did what I did every single night. I didn't listen to him. I closed up that bar. I went out, got drunk as I could, walked home, phoned up, dial a bottle. But when I was walking home this night, I was 24 years old, and a thought rings through my head, and it says, "Justin, do you drink too much?" And I was like, "No, there's no way. I'm young. I like to have fun. I'm in this big, beautiful city of Vancouver. If anyone's ever seen it, it's one of the most beautiful cities there is, right on the water. And I'm bartending here. I'm living my life. There's no way I'm an alcoholic, or I drink too much." So I take a couple more steps, and all of a sudden this thought rings through my head, and it's my own voice, and it says, "Justin, are you an alcoholic?" Well, right then and there, I said this word for word. I'm like, there's no way I'm an alcoholic. I go to work, I pay my bills. I'm not a lowlife, and I am too smart to be an alcoholic. I was so smart that I graduated that year to drug abuse, I guess. And things really started to fall for me. I started to miss work, and I ended up moving back home. I'm from Salmon Arm, a small town of about 18,000 people. And I moved home, and I started to manage a nightclub. And that nightclub, I had drugs readily available. I had alcohol, at my feet, and I really started to struggle, and I started to spiral down. And it wasn't until 4 years later, I met a girl, and, in between that time, I was moving around from city to city to city, kind of just chasing jobs, bartending here, bartending there, losing myself along the way, continuing to drink every day, continuing to use drugs, continuing to lose weight. I'm 6'3", and I was probably over 180 pounds back then, but that wasn't good weight, right? I was bone for me. But eventually I met this girl, we hung out, but my drinking just kept pursuing and getting more and more, and we ended up breaking up, but we kept in touch. And then one day, we hung out a couple times, but one day she called me and she's like, "Justin, I'm pregnant." She's like, "You can either be in this kid's life, or I'm keeping it, or you don't have to be." And I was like, "No way, I'm being in this kid's life." So we got back together, but my drinking didn't go down. And so finally, I'm like, I have a kid coming. I need to go to rehab. So I went to the rehab for the very first time, but when I went to rehab, I went with the total wrong mindset. I went there, 60 other men. I went to all my counseling sessions, right? There's like 4 or 5 a day, but I was working out twice a day, eating healthy, gained a lot of weight, got up to like 240 pounds. And, but when I got out, the first thing I said was, "I'm not done drinking forever." Well, I just spent 42 days away, no, 35 days away from my pregnant girlfriend. And the first thing I said was, I'm not done drinking forever. Well, you can probably guess what happened. 1 month later, we have our son. 2 months later, I start drinking again, making bad decisions. And then 6 months after that, my girlfriend had to make tough decisions I ever have to make and leave me at my lowest point. And man, I don't blame her. I was in no shape to have a kid around. Now, when she left me, I was actually I had a leave of absence from work so I could go to rehab. And they said, Justin, listen, you need to get yourself better. Because I was working at a mill at that time and running heavy equipment. I'm very fortunate that I never hurt anybody, because when I was working there at 28 years old, those would be the start of my suicidal thoughts. And I would have them every single day for 6 straight years. And, I'd ask myself, am I going to make it? Am I going to make it? One time, my ex would drop off my son so I could see him. Now, I couldn't drive with him in my car per court order, and I could only see him twice a week for 4 hours at a time. So I was very fortunate that she would drive him to my house, because I had a blow box in my vehicle. So I lost it for drinking and driving. And it was the second time I did that. But she dropped off my son, and what does a 2-year-old want to do when he sees his dad? He never gets to see, he wants to play with daddy. Well, unfortunately for me, I couldn't. I was struggling. When you struggle with your mental health, you're going to have a hard time regulating your emotions. You're going to go through sadness, prolonged sadness, irritability. You're going to be lonely. You're going to be depressed. You're going to be confused. You're going to want to isolate yourself. And, those are just some of the symptoms that I was going through. So I had to pick him up and distract him. So I took him to the store. I got him a bag of chips and a bag of candy, and I brought him back home, and, I gave him that stuff and turned on the TV so I could distract him. And as he sat there distracted, I looked at the back of his head, and I started to cry to myself. And I started to ask myself this question I ask myself every single day. Justin, are you going to make it? Or are you going to make it to see him graduate? Are you going to make it to see him get married? Are you going to make it to teach him ride a bike, or even see him score his first goal in hockey? Hey, I'm Canadian. That's big for us, But the answer inevitably every single time was no. I couldn't picture myself as future, because one time I got hospitalized for the third time, the second time in 2 weeks, with alcohol poisoning. And as I sat there in that bed, my ex brought down my son so I could see him. And I'll never forget the way he looked at me and he looked at his mom. He walked through the curtain, he looked at me, he looked at his mom, looked at me, he looked at his mom again, and he says, Mommy, what's wrong with daddy? All right, then and there, I was like, I need to end this. I need to end this so that he has a father that he deserves. A father that's going to pick him up when he falls down, or a father that, maybe holds him down there a little bit just to make him realize he's got a little bit longer before he catches his old man. But, a father that's going to teach him the ways of life, and not a father who's going to be in the hospital with alcohol poisoning, or is going to miss time with him because he's using. So why don't I just end it? My friends, my family, they'll understand. My ex, she's smart, she's intelligent. She's a massive heart. She'll find a dad that he deserves, and the kids too. He won't remember me. So why don't I just end it? When you get into that mindset, which is a really bad mindset to get into, you start to think to yourself, okay, this world is better off without me. So I started to think, what, this kid, if I just end this, he's going to have a better dad, and my friends, my family members, they're not going to have to babysit me anymore. I don't have to be the black sheep. I should just end this. Well, that mindset's very hard to change. And when you start to tell yourself that kind of stuff, you start to tell yourself what I believe is the world's biggest lie. And that is that this world is better off without you. The truth is this world is better off with you. I believe that you are created on purpose for a purpose, and that you are here to make a difference, whether you believe it or not. That maybe your possibilities, maybe it's your capabilities, or maybe it's just giving that person a smile when you walk by them. Because you know what? A smile, we all know, can go a long way. At that time, I was very fortunate to start to go to the gym, and I was listening to motivational speaking. And all these speakers, I had no idea who they were at the time, but I was listening to Trent Shelton, Inky Johnson, Les Brown, and Eric Thomas. Now, most people in motivational speaking, those guys are at the top. And I had no idea who they were, but they all had something in common. And it was find your why. So I started to ask myself, okay, Justin, well, what is your why? What's your why that's going to keep you going? That's going to motivate and drive you to get better. And I started to look at the little boy again, and I started to think, well, I need to get better for you. right? Because I couldn't do it for myself. And a lot of people are going to say, hey, you got to do it for yourself. And yeah, you should. But I know for guys like me and guys in rehab that I went with, we couldn't do it for ourselves. So we had to find our why. We had to grab a hold of it and take it with us everywhere. Now, the thing is that everyone has a why. Every single person has a why. 100% it's you. But if you can't see that, you must find one. Because when you find one, it always comes back on you. I got better for my kid, which I got better, makes me get better for me. So it always technically comes back to you. And there's a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche says, he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. So I made it my why, and I went back to rehab for the second time. And, this time when I went back to rehab, I paid attention, right? I went to the gym still, because the gym's my happy place. It's the best antidepressant I've ever had. When I go to the gym, I like to listen to motivation speaking. I listen to audible books. I take notes. It's my happy zone. Don't talk to me. Leave me alone. Maybe give me a head nod, but it's my zone to where I feel better. And you can release those happy chemicals, reward chemicals like your serotonin, your dopamine, your endorphins. But I did that and I paid attention. And in rehab, they taught us the how. So in rehab, they don't really worry about the substance per se. They worry about the why and the how. So why do you use, and the how are you going to get better? So in rehab, they taught us things like, gratitude. What are you grateful for in your life? Doing it consistently over time, morning and night, reminding yourself of what you have good in your life is actually scientifically proven to rewire the neuroplasticity you have in your brain for happiness. They went over things like journaling, getting your thoughts out of your head and onto paper. Eating healthy, because there's actually a direct correlation between your gut health and your mental health. Exercise, like I like to say, listening to positive podcasts, audible books. And one of the biggest things that helped me was listening to guys like me, struggle and what they did to get better. Listening to manly men being like, hey, you know what? It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to mess up. But listen, you got to take responsibility and you got to take action yourself. No one's coming to save you. There are definitely people that can help you, but the people that are going to have to save you is it's going to have to be yourself. But there's people that can help you along the way. And then I realized that anytime I was going to feel down, I was going to make sure I talked about it. So I went to rehab for the second time and I felt great. And, I got out and, I started off as a car salesman when I got out of rehab. And I had been diagnosed with clinical depression, which is sadness that persists for longer than 2 weeks. It's called major depression, social and general anxiety, and ADHD. Now, when you have anxiety and ADHD and depression, man, you don't want to be a car salesman. That's like the last thing you want to do. I have people coming in, they want to talk to me, and I'm like, oh, my anxiety's flaring up, and I can't pay attention, and I should have taken a couple months to figure out what I really wanted to do, and then I end up hitting what they like to call the pink cloud. So you get out of rehab, you feel great, right? You just went and did 35 days, you got yourself better, you're sober, you got this, you learned all these coping mechanisms, but then all of a sudden this pink cloud hits, and it's like, oh man, I got to do this for the rest of my life. And when you learn in rehab is like, when you're changing in here, man, they're not changing out there. The world is staying the same. So I stopped doing those coping mechanisms. I stopped doing all those healthy habits. And, I had my son one day and I didn't know what to do. So I gave him to my mom and I started to drink again because I didn't know how to deal with those thoughts that I had. And those thoughts came back, and they came back hard. Eventually where I ended up going in and becoming an organ donor. I got milk thistle for my liver and kidney flush because I was preparing my body to die. Because I thought, you know what, Justin, you need to get your body healthy and you can give it to somebody else, somebody that deserves it, because you just keep messing up. Now, shortly, a couple months after that, I quit my job because I was missing work again. And I found myself on January 4th sitting in my room in my basement suite. And sorry about that.
Okay.
I found myself staring around the room. And I was looking at pictures of my kid. I was looking at his toys. It was dark. The blinds were shut. I had tin foil on the windows, right? Followed by curtains and like towels because I didn't want light coming in. And I'm like, man, you're not going to make it. I'm like, you got two choices here, Justin. You could either ask for help or your son's going to grow up without his biological father. And I was like, cool. Finally, I pick up the phone and I call my mom, and I was living under my mom at that time. And I'm like, you need to take me to the hospital. So she comes and picks me up and takes me to the hospital. And finally, I had my dad to my left of me, I had my mom in front of me, and I counseled to the right. And I'm like, if I have to continue to feel like this, I have a plan, and the plan is to end it. When I said those words out loud, and my mom and my dad sitting there, the counselor was good, right? But to say those words out loud, like, took half the weight off my shoulders. And I was fortunate enough that I could go back home after 4, 5, 6 hours maybe, and because I lived underneath my mom. But right then and there, I made a promise to myself, like, Justin, you need to change. Like, you can't do this. Like, you can't go on living this. You're gonna have to make a choice. And from January 4th, 2019, I've been sober for over 4 years now. And I've gone to school to be a life coach. I've gone to school to be a speaker, and I've got to travel. I've got to fly around, to be a speaker, and I've got to be able to impact people, be on podcasts, and it's because I asked for help. But one of the biggest things I did was I started to commit to my medication. I started to commit to my doctor's appointments or my counseling appointments, because anytime I used to feel better, I'd stop taking my meds. I'd stop going to my counseling appointment, and I'd say, hey, I don't need you. I can do this alone. But when I did that, all of a sudden that vicious cycle would come out. I'd start drinking. I'd miss time with my kid and time at work. So I started to commit to my healthy coping mechanisms, commit to seeking the help, staying with the help. And I've been able to turn my life around and, be able to help and serve other people.
Wow. Justin, I mean, I could not stop you. I had to listen to the whole thing because the flow was there. And, you really give us a visual of the whole timeline. And while it took about 20 minutes to articulate this, we can spend another 5 hours really breaking it down. And I want to start doing that right now. But because there's so many things you've covered in this little time, and people watching and listening right now, if you just pay attention to the words that Justin has used, from the beginning of the show, is things that he experienced, and he's sharing those to us. And then we're going to take the next part of the discussion as to like what you have become and how you're taking it on the road and everything and the work you do. But I want to go back to the source of the problem, right? Or the source. You were a young dude and happy, and you know what? There's a lot of people out there just like that, right? Today that are listening and watching, and there will be plenty. Or people that are past that stage on any given stage, let's say. But you stated some things about, how you wanted to belong, you wanted to feel good, and you needed some support and some kick, and the kick was that. And that's actually what's happening to a lot of people. Like, I want to have fun. Let me get some nice little buzz, right? I want to have some, extra, I guess audacity. And then, let me get some Coke or something to get, happy and just be doing my thing. And by the way, at the time when you are that age, the world looks like fun. I mean, everything is fun. Yeah, I remember those days like yesterday. It was cool days. I mean, college days and all these. I tell my kids, it's the best time of your life. I mean, because you really have you to worry about, and you can have a great time. But if you do it wrong, the ripple effect, the real, domino effect is serious. And it led to many years of despair and problems and issues and, a lot of things. And we're going to break those down. So you stated that, but one thing about that concept of you using some substance to kind of make you feel good at the time, it is actually what people are looking at these days, and by the way, this is starting now. It is sad to say that even in elementary school and middle school, well, not elementary, middle school and high school, it is now predominant where you can see some level of addiction level is already happening, right? It's kind of starting there. I mean, there's programs, drug programs, drug, awareness, programs in the schools and stuff. I've seen a few, my kids have gone through, but it is starting at that age, and it feels like, this is a cool thing. It's a habit. It's like, you're not too cool if you're not into this. You're not too cool. So if you're listening and watching, folks, and if you're a parent or you are actually going through the stage, know that you don't have to be cool using those things, because you need to know what the outcome is. And the outcome is going to be two things. either one that's going to be a rough road and then you're going to eventually get out of it, and the other one probably be a rough road and you're going to end up, not in this world. And many things can you could miss on a lot of things, and basically that's it, right? And so not a cool place to be. And know that you don't have to have alcohol, you don't have to have drugs, you don't have to have any of that to enjoy life and be the best that you can be. I mean, I don't know, get orange juice. And get some sugar. I mean, and we can talk about sugar addiction as well, but that's another way, right? But the idea is you don't have to do that. You don't have. I think a lot of us we think that if we're not meeting the expectation of our entourage, we're not belonging, and therefore we kind of almost mimic their behavior or whatever, and we want to do like the cool thing so we can be part of this group or engagement, whatever that is. So that was the first thing that you talked that kind of got into my mind, the idea that as a younger person, you were into it and it made you feel good. And then one led to the other. And so that was the thing. Then to your point, you were doing just the alcohol, but then now you need an extra kick. Now you added like almost like more gasoline into the fire.
Yeah.
Now you have two highs, not just one addiction and another one. But you also stated something powerful, which always comes back in the discussion whenever we talk about addiction, is that you were in denial first. It's like, I'm good. I'm doing all my stuff. I am cool. There's no problem with me here. And I think that's the first problem that I think everybody that has, an addiction of any sort, no, I don't have that problem. I mean, we can joke about it. I tell my kids, you're addicted to your phone or to your Snapchat or whatever, because they cannot literally let go from the phone. I mean, they walk in with one hand with the phone and doing everything with one hand. It's like, you have two hands for a reason. You can drive the phone for 5 minutes. But they don't see it. It's becoming an addiction. And that's the problem with it. Like, you don't see it. People seeing it, but you're not. And you're completely, I'm not accepting what you're saying. I'm cool. I know what I'm doing. I got this. The problem is you don't got this, and you don't realize you don't get this until things are getting worse. So now you said something that even your colleague and by the way, your environment was not helpful because you were surrounded with the alcohol and then the party business, which that's the other thing. I mean, sometimes you have to remove yourself from the elements, right? That are actually, it's like you've been anchored into that world. You had to separate, but that was hard to do anyways, because that was your world. That's where you found yourself. So that was tough. And for people who are watching and listening, this is a real life scenario, a real person, a real family, real lives that have been impacted. I mean, you didn't just impact your life; you've impacted a lot of people around you. I mean, your girlfriend, your child, your parents, everybody that was in your world had to be impacted by you. And this is what we don't sometimes realize: it is not always about us; it's about everybody around us. And I think that's most of us are selfish enough to always realize that it's all about me. But we don't realize the impact that we have on society as a whole, on the immediate society or our families, and then entourages. And also we are role models to whoever is around us. I mean, if people are seeing who you are, they're probably gonna like, well, Justin is cool. I want to be just like Justin. But they don't know what Justin is going through, right? You mentioned something also very powerful about, who knew about depression and anxiety at an early age, right? People don't believe in that. Like, I can't possibly have depression. I don't have anxiety. I'm not, that's for the other guys. It doesn't happen to me. But and what you said even more powerful is that the statistics are staggering. They're crazy. We all have some level of mental health, issue one way or the other at a given time of our life. Things happen. Life is really brutal. It takes a toll on people. And if you are one way they are persuaded to do one or the other things that can be detrimental to your health, it can just destroy you. And sometimes alcohol can make that quick satisfaction that, it's like you almost kind of like ignore everything. Like you put your life on hold. I mean, it's like a high and then the world is ending. Like, it's like an escape, in your own
what
world.
it is. I basically drank or did drugs to change my mindset. I knew that.
Well, you did it, but because you want, like, I don't want to know anything. I mean, I'm cool. As long as I'm drunk and, the world, I can give a shit, what's going on around me. I'm happy. And really, I mean, as blunt as it sounds, that's really what people feel. And I get it. I mean, I have not suffered personally from it, but I've seen people around me who had that. And when you talk to them, that's exactly the reaction.
Well, the thing is when I was 24 and I walked across the Canby Street Bridge in Vancouver, and I asked myself those two questions: do you drink too much? Or are you an alcoholic? I had a warm feeling rush up through my body when I asked myself if I was an alcoholic. And I said those words to myself. And then, but I knew, I knew, I 100% knew that I was an alcoholic, but I didn't want to admit it. Because if I admit it, then I have to change it. I like to tell people that, like, my 3 A's. First you got to admit the problem, then you have to accept it internally, and then you have to ask for help. Now, it wasn't until 28 where I finally admitted it to myself. But when I admitted it, I didn't accept it, right? Because you have to accept it. Acceptance in life is massive, right? I had to accept that I had the problem, but I didn't, because, like I said, when I saw other people drinking, I would go back to my drinking because I think I was just as smart as them, or I stopped taking my medication. So when it was truly that I accepted, hey, that I shouldn't, I'll never say can't drink. I shouldn't drink. I shouldn't do drugs, that I could really start to make the changes I need to make. Right? There's things, and acceptance, like I said, there's a big part of acceptance and forgiveness or acceptance in life. But one of the hows I learned in rehab, and I've actually learned it in coaching too, is the power of acceptance and forgiveness. How there's going to be times in your life where an experience or event or person is going to hurt you. They're going to do something to hurt you, to upset you. But one of the first things you have to do to get over that is you have to accept that it truly happened. Doesn't mean you have to like it, right? Doesn't mean you have to like it whatsoever, but you have to accept that event or that person that happened actually happened. And you have to do that so that you can forgive it. And you forgive it so you can stop living in your past and create your future. Now, the cool thing about forgiveness is that you don't have to, if it's a person that hurt you, you don't have to tell them. You don't have to be like, hey, you know what? I forgive you. You can, but you must forgive them for you, right? So that you can move on. But then there's times where, especially for me, the person that you're going to have, event you're going to have to accept is something that you did. And the person that you're going to have to forgive is yourself. And that was one of the hardest things I had to do, is accept the things that I did, forgive myself, and then learn to love myself, right? And forgive everything I did and realize that's not me, but I did them, but then forgive myself. And that was probably one of the hardest things I had to do. But I do believe that people are more aware, they give themselves credit for, but it's when you admit it, when you finally admit it, that's when you have to make the change. So I think maybe people try to not admit it to themselves, because once you admit it, then you don't make the change, and all of a sudden guilt and shame comes in, right? The difference between guilt and shame, Brene Brown, who's incredible, I learned about her in rehab, is guilt is you did something bad. Shame is you are bad. And she says shame is secret for breakfast. And so when you continually to do stuff that you know is wrong, or you keep things inside that you know you should be talking about, you start to feel shameful. When you say I am something, you start to believe it, and your thought turns into a belief. That belief becomes a truth, and then that truth controls your actions, and all of a sudden, you're messing up, you're using more, and it's a whole downfall. So many things you can do by not admitting the problem, accepting it, and asking for help.
Well, just thank you for breaking down, because, the analogy, really looking at the story and looking at the reality of things, right? It's when you start in this whole journey happy, right? And getting involved with the alcohol and drugs, and it looks so great. It's like going that roller coaster and just going up happy up the hill and trying to get into that moment where you're going to get, the ride is good. But then when you're going down, it's bad. I mean, it's really brutal, right? It's rock bottom hit. It is tough. And that's really, so you're getting the high, you're getting excited, but then a lot of things. In your case, and I love what you said about you did not want to admit first. And I think that is really the biggest barrier across everybody. And by the way, this is not about addiction. Most of us, when we're wrong, we don't like to admit it, period. And because we don't choose to be aware that we could be wrong. We just want to accept the idea that we're never wrong. And that's a problem across the board, addiction or no addiction. But when you have addiction, it's even the highest level, because now, to your point, admitting it means I got to take actions. I'm not ready to take actions. I don't want to do anything about this. I like my life the way it is. Yes, it sucks, but you know what? I feel good. And so between that feel good and really taking the necessary steps to move out of that feel good and feel better, actually, you're not looking at, I want to feel better. You just want to feel good for the moment. And then that's where it ends. Now, in your life, in your experience, what you said, there are two triggers that made you be aware. One is you had that conversation with your fellow bartender who actually did question you. And I think that subconsciously was there floating, because to your point, later on, you asked the question yourself, am I? Probably, maybe, I don't know. If he didn't ask the question, you maybe not even trickle to it. You might not have gone that little trigger, connection. But then the biggest piece is all of a sudden now you are becoming a father. Now, not everybody that's listening and watching may have your scenario. And maybe not everybody will have a big event in their life that's going to change their thought process and maybe give them the wake up, like the red light. Woo, woo. It's time for you to do something. Think about this new life that you just brought into this world. Some people may not have that, right? And maybe that could be a problem because they need another type of trigger to get them going, right? Your case, you had the friend that actually, I would say it's a good friend that actually did give you that, because not everybody is going to come to you and say, hey, dude, something's wrong with you. You know what I mean? Now, people tend to keep it to themselves. They don't want to come. If someone likes you, they'll come to you and tell you. So always surround yourself with people that will tell you the truth, because those are the people that really care. And then again, now you had this big change of life. I mean, you have a young life that's coming, and to your point, you want to be part of it. You want to be part of this life. You're going to make some necessary changes and difficult changes, because at that point, the world, will suck, without your addiction, right? Because that's the world. Now you did take the step. The good news is that you didn't say no. You said, okay, I'm going to do it. Now, what you did though, you went to rehab, as you said, but you didn't commit to the rehab. It was like, this is just, I'm going through the motions. And by the way, that can happen to everybody, guys. We might talk about it. It sounds easy. I'm pretty sure going to rehab is not an easy picnic, stage. And you're right. You have to have commitment. By the way, everything we do in life, if you're not committed enough, you're not going to get it done, period. And so the commitment means you really are present, not just physically, but you're conscious. Everything is there. And you have to do the work. It's not like, I'm listening in and it just goes out the other ear. You want it to be there functionally and take the action. You did it. You came out, but it didn't stick with you. And the reason I'm highlighting this example is that for people that may think like, well, it didn't work. Guess what? We're talking to Justin today, years later. He's gone through this process a couple of times. He's gone through the process over and over. He didn't give up. He failed. Maybe for some people, they'll define it that way. That was not failure. The reason that he's here, that's a success. So the fact is, he just didn't do it at the first take. He took another stab at it. A little bit more time required, that's the way it was. And that's the thing for people. So if you're going through a tough time right now, addiction or otherwise, know that attempt, get the steps in. And if it's not working out, it's not the end. You can do it again and again until you get out of it. And that's always a good message to keep. Like, obviously if you can get it the first shot, perfect. But if you don't lose hope. Never lose hope.
It actually takes the average, from what I heard from an addictions counselor, 17 times.
Ooh. And I'm talking about just a couple of times. You did good, man.
Well, there's, I've been to over 100 doctor's appointments. I've spent 77 days in rehab. I've been to 45 addiction appointments, 19 psychologists, 10 psychiatrists. I've tried 8 different meds, from antidepressants to ADHD to anger to bipolar, and that one why really helped. But it took me, so when my girlfriend left, it took me 3 years before I got sober.
I'm sure that added up too. I mean, the fact that now you
so I didn't just find my why and do it right away, but it took me 3 years. But after that 3 years, 6 months after I got sober, I'm back together with the mother of my son, and we're married now, and we actually have another baby girl.
Congrats.
But it wasn't. It's not linear, man. It's like up, down, up, down. The thing is realizing that you deserve something more. I remember the other day, I was talking to my coach, and I was like, man, getting kind of, my confidence is kind of dropping in my coaching. And he's like, okay. He's like, why? It's because we have expectations, huge expectations on ourselves, right? And they're usually, higher than what we put on somebody else. And he's like, okay, we'll go back and check out your testimonials. So I went back and I read the testimonials I have, and they're all fantastic, right? Now, what if we did that for our life? What if you're struggling and you went to your friends and say, hey, your close friends, the ones you trust, what do you think of me? And then you wrote it down. And then every time you felt, down, you read it. It's a testimonial from your friends. Now, when you do that, though, you have to realize one thing we can do is we can put our opinions ahead of other people, right? It's like, oh, we have this deep-seated belief in ourselves that we don't deserve that. So even when we ask them, it's like, okay, what do you think? Well, I think you're an amazing person. Yeah, well, I don't believe you. Do you think that friend is going to lie to you? Yeah, okay, you're an amazing person. You mess up, but you're still an amazing person. So when we ask our friends for those testimonials, it's like, well, write them down, but believe them, get rid of that internal dialogue and that negative thought pattern that you have that you're not good enough. So one of the things I had to do was realize, hey, I am good enough. That, I'm a smart guy. I'm a nice guy. I care about people and I deserve better. Ed Milet said one time, I don't want to die and meet the person that I could have been. So now it's like, well, what kind of person can I be? Now I got to challenge that. Now I got to try to be the person I can be. So I really had to change, my internal dialogue, the way I spoke to myself, because I told myself, Justin, you're a loser, you're a failure, you're pathetic. But when you have that negative internal dialogue, there's one thing I want you to try to do. And I want you to try to challenge that thought. It's like, okay, well, Justin, you're not good enough. Okay, well, is it true? Well, no, not really. Well, is it absolutely true? Well, no, it's not. Okay, Justin, well, how would you feel if you didn't have that thought? Oh, I'd probably feel pretty good. Now, if a friend had that thought, what would you say to them? Could you say it to yourself? So the thing is, you want to look for the evidence surrounding that thought, not things that you may have done that are wrong, but things that are saying you're consistently not a good person. Because we all mess up, right? But we have to accept ourselves for our mess up, for our past and our flaws, and realize, hey, we are all flawed individuals and we're doing the best we can with what we know sometimes. But the thing about it is if you have, you can have I think it's 80% of your thoughts a day can be repetitive and negative. And so when you question yourself on that thought, is there evidence? And you find out that, hey, you know what, that thought has some evidence behind it. Well, and you got to change it. You got to do, hey, what are 3 things I can do to change that thought and change that outcome? But it's learning that I deserve better. I deserve happiness and I deserve the love I so freely give to other people to have on myself. And it's hard to love yourself. I actually started to look in the mirror and every day and be like, Justin, I love you. Whether I believed it or not, I would say, hey, man, I love you. And eventually, it's not faking it till you make it, because you actually do love yourself. Like I said, you may mess up, but you should love yourself. You give love to everybody else. You give love to a pet, a kid, a family member, or a best friend. Well, start to give that love to yourself because you deserve it.
Justin, I love what you're saying. First of all, you're throwing some serious stuff there. I mean, one is you had mentioned just before the why, right? You had to find the why, and the why is the why you did the wrong thing and the why you need to get out of it. It's the same. I mean, it's 2 different whys, but really the why is the most powerful question. I mean, actually, yeah. I had this question asked to me, like, what is the most powerful question in the world? And it is why. Because when you ask why, you can figure things out. The reason then you start looking for things, right? And you did. And so that was one. And then once you have the why, you said it's the how. How do we get through this? And you did. Now and I love what you said. I mean, by the way, thank you for sharing, the details about your life. I mean, not everybody that has the ability to do this and willing to do it, but you're doing it because you believe and it's helping you and it's helping people. But you said it. You had, multiple, days in rehab. You had so many things that you had to go through and it wasn't easy. It's not a picnic. It's not going to be to your point, it's not linear. It's up and down, good days and bad days. But you talked about the power of words that you say to yourself, the power of dialogue with yourself, questioning things, asking, am I really those things or bad things? And that's the other thing. We actually undermine the power of what we say to ourselves. You said, I'm not good. I'm failing. I'm not, I don't think I deserve this. If you say this stuff, that subconscious is just going to start kicking in and it's going to take over. And that's all you're going to see. It's mindset. And your mindset is going to be completely drained and it's bad. And then the outcome is just going to be a bad one. But having those dialogues, and I love what you said, you got to give love to people. Well, you got to start with you. Self-talk, self-love is important. You have to it starts here, and believing in yourself, believing that you can make a difference. I love what you said. Today, you are married, you have another child, and life is peachy, and you've been sober, and you're helping the world, and you took the necessary steps. However, you did say in the first time when you came out, the second time when you came out, you got, into the depression, the anxiety and stuff. That was not there, yet. And then it triggered another worst case where you had to decide whether I want to live or not. I mean, let's go for what it was. I mean, you started feeling that the world deserves not to have you, and your son deserves to have somebody else but you. And those are, again, talking about negative words, stating things to yourself. When you were saying those things, you were really ready to check out, if you want, say that. But one thing that you did that many people unfortunately don't have, or sometimes it's too late. They don't talk about it. You actually came out and stated loudly to people, and you went to the hospital, and your parents were there, and it shifted a little bit. It kind of made a difference. That transitional piece is important. If you feel, and folks that are watching and listening, again, we've had so many discussions about suicide and suicidal thoughts and stuff. If you get to the point when it's time to start questioning whether you want to live or not, don't deal with it by yourself. There are people out there. There are suicide hotlines. The 988 number. The 998, I think, is the number. Dial the number. There are outreach hotlines. There's people. There's advocacy groups. And I know you are an advocate. But these are people out there that can help you. Talk to someone. Don't think that it's little. And the next thing you know, you're not here. Now you're not here. You probably close that chapter, but you're affecting other people. In your case, for example, you have a son, right? Mm-hmm. That you got to think about that son, right? And so now you were thinking. So here's the thing: the amazing thing is they were thinking about him, and by checking out would have been like a positive thing. That's how you thought about it. Like, I don't want to be in his life so he can have a better life. On the flip side, we want to tell the people right now is that you could say, I want to be there for the son. I want to be there, which you said the first time. I have a son coming. I want to be in his life. I want to give him the best. And those are, again, shifts in how you think and how you speak to yourself. And then that's going to give you the self-love, the self-talk, and the pumping. And then the rest is history. And then, of course, it's going to take work. It's not going to be easy. You have to take all the necessary steps to get it done. It's not like, snap and then it's over. And it wasn't over. I mean, it took you years before you got, what is the total time frame? I think I got more or less, about 8 years or so, or maybe more.
Well, it took me 6 years to quit. When I admitted that I was, depressed, and I admitted that I was abusing substances, took me 6 years to quit. But hey, man, I still have social and general anxiety. I can still get anxiety talking to people. I can still get depressed, and I've had, and I can still get suicidal thoughts. Now I know I won't act on them, but I had them, and it took me a while because I'm like, I got the imposter syndrome, thinking, man, you can't have these thoughts and coach people. And then I still see a psychologist every now and then because I don't want to go backwards. I do not want to go backwards. So if I get something that I'm questioning, I do like, hey, I want this answer. I go see him, and I started to talk to him, and I had that suicidal ideation for so long that there was an option for me, and that's why I can get him. And I'm like, no, what? I talked to him, so no, it's not an option. Get rid of it. But I can still get depressed. I can see the world differently from a lot of people. I have a lot of empathy, and going through what I've gone through, I see maybe the world differently. I have a different take on homelessness, and a lot of people are like, okay, well, it's a choice, and yeah, you know what, I chose to keep using and stuff like that. But my mom let me live in her basement suite, so I wasn't given up on. I gave up on myself. I was lucky people didn't give up on me because I don't know where I'd be. But when you consistently use drugs, people are also giving up on you. When you give up on yourself, you can go down that dark path of, hey, what's the point? Why don't I just go live on the street? There was a point where I almost left my mom's house to go live on East Hastings in Vancouver, which is one of there's the biggest population of homelessness, so I could be around people like me. I wouldn't be the black sheep anymore. So I have a different view on how I look at the world and how people are treated. So I can still get depressed. I can still get hard on myself, but I have equipped myself with enough tools and coping mechanisms to get out of that. But I also have that, that counselor in my back pocket that, hey, if I, struggling, bring up, hey, let's chat. And it's good to have that because I actually found something out the other day. And a couple months ago, we were talking. And he's like, Justin, I don't think you had the love and connection you needed as a child. So I was searching for love and connection through substances, right? Through materialistic things, looking for that dopamine hit that I was always searching for. And I was like, I'm like, no, that just blames my parents for things. He's like, no, he's like, it's not blaming your parents for things. It's just you were searching for love and connection. I don't think you had it. So that opened up a door for me. So I ended up talking to my mom and my dad about it. And my dad's like, you know what, man? He's like, I probably didn't give you the love and connection you needed as a kid. Some kids need more than others, right? Some kids are more independent growing up. But my dad was an Army brat. He was out at 16 years old. I didn't know this about him. He saw his parents fighting all the time. And he said he turned to alcohol to escape. Now, he was pretty good at hiding it from me. But it opened up a door for more understanding for myself, for me saying, hey, Justin, okay, because I always said, you're a bad kid. You deserve that. But it opened up a door to realize, hey, you know what? That contributed, not all of it. I still made poor decisions. Like, don't get me wrong. I was an adult and I made those decisions, but it contributed to that by just talking to my counselor. That opened up a door and it closed another one. So even if, you start to struggle a little bit, it's okay to talk to other people, because what does the counselor do? They give you another perspective and they look into your blind spots without judgment. They don't care what you say. They want to know the truth, and they're trained to look at it with no judgment and give you another perspective. Because a lot of the time you're going to be lying to yourself to make yourself feel better or to protect yourself. And what it does is it hinders you from growing as a person. So I kept that counselor in my back pocket, and then that opened up another door for me and closed another one. And I'm very grateful that I got to learn that experience, and I got to put it in my book, actually.
Well, I love what you're saying right now, is because it's, first of all, you're still having your systems in place, because you have to have your backup systems. I think that's your backup generator. You need to have that more. When you are in doubt, you ask. When you still have those tools, which is, you didn't say, okay, I don't need any more. I'm perfect. You're not. None of us is perfect. Actually, that's the clear understanding. We need to be clear about that. We all need some help and someone to talk to, and sometimes a resource. Now, the one thing you said that was so powerful, that I want to reiterate right now, the example you said, I don't want to meet the guy that it could have been, right? But guess what? You're meeting the guy that you could have been, and that's you today. Justin today is the guy that is the right guy, right? Justin is helping people. Justin is not only helping himself, but he is also a beacon to others and helping others get through this stuff, and they can get through it because you did it, and many people are doing it. And so, it is powerful to realize that, and that's the thing that sometimes people don't see. Like and I've had so many examples, by the way. I have a few guests that we've had similar cases,
yes.
and today they are like at the best of the best. They're probably one of the best people I've met, in terms of motivation, aspiration, so on and so forth. And imagine if they stopped. Imagine if they're not here. We couldn't have them today. The world would not have them today. But yet you are here. You're here helping people. That's your legacy. See, that's the thing. Don't give up on yourself too fast, too easy. You can do more, and you don't know what you are destined to be and to do. And and that's the thing. Sometimes we're almost like shortcutting ourselves. Like, I don't think I'm gonna amount to anything. You have everything. No one knows what the top achievement they can do. You got to go through the max, and you're going to keep and do, and you will achieve, and you're going to help, and you're going to be more than what you've ever been. And that's a fact. The minute you start saying that, nah, I'm not, who am I? What am I going to do? What kind of contributions am I going to, bring to this world? There's plenty of people doing this. There's not enough people, folks. There's 8 billion people out there. All right. And by the way, not everybody has access to people like you and all those people that are actually doing the work right now. Not everybody has a life coach. Okay. Maybe these shows have a little bit of extension because they can be heard somewhere around the world. But out of the 8 billion people, maybe 1 billion may have direct access to this information, or even half of that. Who knows? The numbers are huge. So there is not enough people out there doing good deeds and helping people getting better, and so on and so forth. People have to have somebody to listen to all the time. Sometimes it's religion. Sometimes it's your best friend. Sometimes it's somebody. I love what you said about your best friend or friends that will talk to you and tell you, as opposed to just like walk away and don't care. That's important. I love the idea that you said about, people did not give up on you. See, and you were right there, because there was a point where you could have been completely off and on your own. And had you done that, maybe things would have been a different position from today, because you would have, to your point, been maybe just living out, there, and maybe it got worse in the addiction. You don't know. And, sometimes people come back, sometimes people don't come back. It is not easy. So first of all, I'm glad. By the way, we love that you're here, Justin, and, keep up the great work, dude. You're doing it, and, continue doing. You are literally an inspiration to many, and people can change. It's just, to your point, you have to admit, you have to commit, you have to take the work, the action, you have to do the work, and don't give up on yourself, period. Talk good, talk positive. I love the idea that you look at yourself, say, I love you, man. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you got to psych yourself nicely. I mean, this is your best friend. This is the only person that you see every day. That's the one that came with you and is going to go with you. So by the way, if you're not right, you can't be right around the people around you. This has to be the first, priority. And then if this is good, everybody around you is going to be good. If this is wrong, it impacts everybody. I'll give you an example. You lose a job, you're stressed. You stress everybody around you. You have a bad day at work, you stress everybody around you. So if you can manage yourself well, you can manage everybody around you. Even at work, if your energy is psyched and everything is good, you're going to give that vibe to everybody. The frequency is going to be different where you are, right? If you are bad, it's going to affect. So your impact is global, but it starts with you.
Well, you have 3 spheres of influence. You have yourself, your relationships or your social network, and then your work, right? So if you don't take care of you, then everything can, start to fall around you. I like to tell this, and you know what, a lot of my coaching clients, they have a hard time with self-love and taking care of themselves because they think it's not greedy. What word am I looking for?
Selfish?
Selfish. Yeah. Selfish. They're like, it's selfish, dude. I'm like, no, it's not. Now, so I challenge them. Okay. Imagine this. Imagine you're tired. You're at 60%. Okay. Now you're giving 100% of your 60% to your family. Well, what are you giving? You're giving 60% of yourself still. Now, what if you took care of yourself, 5, 10, 15, half an hour a day? You fill up your bucket, you take a bath, you read a book, you get out for a walk, something. What if you did that? You put yourself first a little bit. You said no to somebody else, right? Hey, you know what? I'm too tired to do that right now. What if you did that? Okay, now you're at 80%. Now, what's 100% of 80%? Still 80%, but it's better than 60. So when you can get yourself better, right? Make yourself a priority. Doesn't mean all the time, right? But if you can take care of yourself more, you will be able to show up better for other people. Renee, my wife, knows that the most important thing in my life right now is my recovery. They are a close second. But if I don't take care of my recovery, when you're a substance user or an addict, you don't just stop being an addict, right? You got to work at it every day. I'm still around alcohol. I play hockey, I play golf, baseball. It's there. You watch a movie, there's alcohol. You watch a commercial, there's alcohol. Like, NFL football is sponsored by Budweiser. Like, it's everywhere. So, right. And in the major leagues, they shortened games, but they extended the beer innings, right? Because people aren't staying long enough and drinking more. So a pitcher in the major leagues came out and was like, man, they shortened the games, but they extended the beer sales from the 7th inning to the 8th inning so they can keep up with those sales. Now people are going to have 1 inning to sober up a little bit, right? So alcohol is all around you. It's being promoted nonstop. So my recovery is still every single day. And for me, it's the most important thing in my life, right? So it's maintaining that recovery, asking for help if I need to, and just maintaining those coping mechanisms.
Well, thank you, Justin. By the way, that's a very powerful statement you mentioned about your support. Your wife understands where you are, and she is there for you, and so she understands that the priority is to make sure that you are recovered 100%, and whatever the time it takes. So that's a big deal, because sometimes if you have that, that's half of the battle, right? If you don't have that, then you're on your own. It's a little harder, right? So, and understanding that they're on your corner, that's another thing, right? It keeps you motivated and keeps you going. And that's a big deal. So again, folks, understanding a lot of these things that we're talking about have dynamics, and it has to do with the people with you, around you. How you deal with things is important. How you know, how you see things. I mean, you are aware. See, that's the thing. Everything you talk about is you're aware every single, second of everything that is happening to you and what's going on. You got to that level where like you can see alcohol from a mile away. Not because you want it, because you are aware that it's there, so you can prevent yourself from getting it. It's the other way around. Like the other way, you would have seen alcohol and you just be part of it. Now you're seeing it. You are like, it's almost like that's danger. And you are literally aware of the danger, whatever it is. And so as long as you're aware, you are manipulating. You can make things happen. If you're not aware, it takes you by surprise. And you're doing that. So it's important, to highlight these things that we talked about. Now, one thing you talked about earlier, and I just want to ask you to its importance in your life. I know you said it was important. It was your high. It was your thing, which was your workout.
Mm-hmm.
Fitness. What is the role of fitness that you would, tell to people today in terms of their recovery? Because I'm sure there's a level that can have some impact on whether you're healthier, better, and doing things sooner or later in terms of your success. Or maybe I'm wrong.
Well, okay. When it comes to fitness, well, like to say, 10,000 steps a day, right? That doesn't have to be running steps, but getting out and getting your steps a day. It's good for your heart health. Half an hour a day. For me, I took the wrong way. In the beginning, I was working out 6 or 7 days a week, and I burnt myself out. I was overtraining. I wasn't resting enough. I wasn't eating properly. Now, if you're going to train a lot, you need to get 8, 9, 10 hours. I'm not a trainer, but I would suggest 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep if you're going to train hard, right? And eat healthy. Get rid of that sugar. Like, there's a direct correlation between your gut health and your mental health, but your 25% of whatever sugar you intake in your body goes to your brain. But it also depletes you. It can make your mood drop, right? So I like to work out 4 or 5 times a week. But you got to listen. You got to listen to your body. I was doing 6, 7 days a week, getting burnt out, and that made me more irritable, made me more tired, made me less present with my family. So you got to find that happy medium. Maybe it's weights 4 days, walk a couple days, or take an active rest day. Maybe it's, people like to do splits, 3 days working out, take a day or 2 off, and then do another workout. But you really got to listen to your body, have a great nutrition, and get in sleep. Sleeping with your phone outside of your room, turning TV off without an hour within you're going to bed. And that is one I actually struggle with, because I don't watch TV during the day. And I like to watch a couple sitcoms at night, but then are you really winding down and having the sleep that you actually need? Fitness can be good. Fitness can be bad, just like anything else, right? It's like social media too.
Right, correct. But did you find it helpful throughout your recovery to have it part of your
life? Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I thought you meant recovery in fitness. No, yeah, it was the best antidepressant I ever had.
No, that was good.
Yeah, because I listened to Audible books. I listened to motivational speaking, and I listened to positive podcasts of people like me that struggled. And one of the guys I listened to in the beginning, like all the time, was Steve Weatherford, who's the NFL punter for the New York Giants. And he did drugs, and he hated himself. And he's like, he got NFL's fittest man. The guy's 6'3", 240, just ripped, right? But he talks about being vulnerable, asking for help, and taking responsibility for yourself. So I started listening to his podcast, and listening to guys like that, really helped me. But that's what I do when I go to the gym. But I also take notes, and I think of my content at the gym. And because what the gym gets is a dopamine fix, but it also releases those happy chemicals, your reward chemicals, and it's good for your heart. But like I said, you got to make sure you're getting adequate rest. But the fitness has been the best thing that has happened to me, and it's a really big part of my routine.
Excellent. Well, all right. Well, so now we're going to talk about, we've gone through the journey, we've gone through where and how, and now let's talk about what you're doing and how you're helping people through your work. So you are a life coach now. You went to, I love what you said. You went to learn about how to become a life coach and to put it into practice and make this part of your legacy and work. Now, What kind of program do you offer, and how? First of all, what is your reach, and how can people work with you and reach out to you?
Well, I created my own coaching program, a couple of them, three of them. And so there's one is a 6-week mindset reset, back to the basic programs. That's on my website. That it's 6 weeks, takes you through a bunch of like lifestyle changes. It's a 42-day. If you can do it in 42 days, that's great. It goes over diet, mindset, eliminating. There's no alcohol. Don't do alcohol. That's the goal. But we're looking for progress over perfection. But that's a do-it-yourself course. Then I'm starting a 10-week Men Awakened Warrior program. That starts on the 24th of April. There's also an option where it's one-on-one access with me, where we go through 12 weeks of just working with me personally, one-on-one. You get modules in each of those programs. You get modules, you get homework, but you also get to talk about what you want to create. I like to think I help people reach their purpose, potential, and their possibilities, while also discovering themselves and finding their why. And I'm going to release, because, not a lot of people can afford to do lengthy programs like that. I'm going to do, maybe if it's monthly calls, bi-weekly calls, and just, it's a lot of it's on accountability, right? Looking past those roadblocks, discovering those self-limiting beliefs and moving past that to, really create the life that you want to create. And that's kind of just a sum up of my coaching. But I go around and I speak about mental health. I speak about substance use, suicide. I cover suicidality. I don't go in depth in my speaking because it can trigger people. But I also cover inspiration. I've been very fortunate to speak at restaurants, to speak at mills. I've spoken at, hockey teams, up to, pipeline people. And then next week, I'm going to speak on, inclusion and hiring people with disabilities, because, mental health, when it can be a disability and a challenge for people. So it's getting people to realize that, hey, we can hire people like that. But also I have our daughter that was born with Down syndrome. And so speaking on, I hope someone can give her the opportunity, the acceptance and inclusion from her peers to grow up and get a job from somebody else. Because, when I got out of the hospital, I told my job, listen, I struggle with my mental health. I'm on medication and I'm an ex-addict. And they gave me a job anyways, right? And so it's to speak on, giving those people an opportunity, right? Just to shine and show people what they got. So I've been very fortunate to be able to speak at schools and like all these different groups, because I can tailor my speech, and it's really been fun to just look over the crowd and see them looking back at you and really engage them and hopefully inspire them and encourage them to make the changes they need to make in life, or look into the views of somebody else who does struggle. Like I said, 1 out of 5 people can have a mental health episode, right? And that can be, if it's not yourself, it can be a loved one. And the number is higher, and unfortunately, it just seems like it's getting higher and higher. This is the way the world's going, affordability, and it's so I get to, give people that, and it's really fulfilling.
Well, I admire the work you do, because it is. Thank you for giving back, and again, because you've been through it, you know more than the average person about this, and actually, it makes you a better subject matter expert. Because many people can say, I can coach you on this, but unless you've been through this yourself, you have no clue. Most of us, we can only imagine. But one thing is, you can't imagine if you go through things, and you can share these things. And so the work you do is very, very important. And I appreciate, personally, I enjoy these discussions, and I support this type of work anytime. So now you work virtual. You said you can do one-on-ones. That's virtual, I'm assuming. So you can work through anybody that
anybody anywhere in the world. Yeah.
Your website is the justinbrien.com. That's it.
Yep.
So I'll have the link to it on the description of the show, so people can actually click in. And if you go to my site, you can click on the picture of Justin, and you will actually get to his site, or you can just go into the description and click as well, and you'll have that. Whatever you watch the show or hear about it, you can have that. So it's available to you. Justin, we're about the end of it. We just exceeded the hour, but it's worth every second of it. So before we part, what would be your, I guess, wise words of advice that you would give our audiences before we close the show?
Well, you're not alone. You're not alone in your struggles. And you don't have to do it. Like, you're not alone. You don't have to do it alone. Like, there's going to be days where you're going to question everything, days where you struggle with your mental health, days where you're confused and lost, days where you're walking through that tunnel and it seems dark. But all you got to do is you got to keep on walking, and you got to walk until you find that light. And if you have to ask for help to find that light, well, that's one of the most important things that you can do, because you're worth it. You deserve it. The world needs you. And you're here for a reason. And I just want you to remember that you are somebody's somebody.
Love it. Love it. That in itself is a gold mine right now. That little 30 seconds, that's like, the biggest hit, you can have as a powerful tool, just to listen to it. It is amazing. So Justin, thank you so much for being with us today, and for the insights, and for sharing, your life journey and the work. And then you said there is a book coming up, right?
Yeah, actually, it's should be out within a month and a half. It's in its final edits. I got the cover. I'm pretty excited. It's called Chasing Shadows, Fighting the Monster Within. And I'm pretty excited. Writing a book, man, I never thought I would. And if I did, I didn't think I'd write on substance abuse, mental health, overcoming obstacles, personal development, and recovery. So it's full of my story, more in depth, but it has life lessons. Like, everything has a lesson to it. And then there's just more lessons after that, like choices, changes, needs, stuff like that in your life that people need to make. And I hope it really impacts somebody. If this episode impacted you, you can email me at justin@justinbrien.com. I'd love to hear from you.
All right. Well, folks, there you have it. You have the email, you have the site, and look out for the book. I mean, I love the book. I mean, at least the title is exciting, and it is going to be a resonating book, which if you read it, you will be able to. And by the way, sometimes we might think that this is, well, I don't suffer from addiction. I don't suffer. Never say I don't, or never say never, as they say. 1, 2, it's not always about us. We might know someone that may be, needing the help, and we can guide them. So the more resources we have, the more we can help. So again, just to keep that in mind, this is not always about us personally. If we are, great, we are direct, customers. If not, we do know, or we might know someone. Let's help somebody else, and just be good people, good, humans, helping each other. All right, Justin, thank you so much for really a great show. I appreciate the time, man.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And so, folks, there you have it again. Great show. I hope that you enjoyed every moment of it. Please, share the show as much as you can. Connect with Justin, and we'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic. Bye for now.